Welcome to Red-tastic. Story 1. I am feeling extremely angry and need a second opinion, apart from my husband's, to decide whether what I did was reasonable or not. The situation is that my 32 female's husband, 31 male, and I rented a place in a big city and lived there for 2 years. While our lease was still not even halfway up, I got pregnant. So we decided to move to be closer to his family. Meanwhile, my brother, 37 male, called and asked if he could move in with his wife and kid because he's moving to the big city looking for a better paying job. He has found himself in some debt and wanted to fix it fast, it seemed. Because his credit had gone to shit, it would be difficult for him to get into a rental agreement. So, no harm in it, we thought. Family helps family after all. So we allowed my brother, his wife and kid to move in with us, and my husband even landed my brother a decent paying job. We moved the next month, leaving the lease open for my brother and his family to stay in the apartment. It's been nearly 8 months since, and recently it's come to my knowledge that sister-in-law has been bad-mouthing me to my family behind my back. Basically, she's been calling me a bad mom, criticizing feeding my baby formula because I don't produce enough milk, not cleaning up the house more, and making husband do chores and sometimes night feeding, etc. A lot of my relatives have called to let me know she's been going around telling them. So I confronted her in all my sleepless postpartum glory. She didn't even have the courtesy to look guilty or apologize. She said she only wanted the best for my baby and my husband, so I needed to get a grip and do a better job at being a mother. I went off on her, and after I got everything I needed to say out, I hung up. Then I called my husband and wept and threw a tantrum till he called our landlord and informed him we do not wish to renew the lease. Earlier, we had made all the plans to renew it for a year because my brother had pleaded with me too. After that, I called my brother up and informed him we would not be renewing the lease and that he only had his wife to blame. My brother was silent on the other end for a long time. When he spoke, he sounded defeated, disappointed, but he said he understood. Now, I feel really awful that I put my brother and niece in this situation. I feel like they didn't deserve this punishment just because sister-in-law is an ungrateful moron, but I just can't take this disrespect. How dare she call me a bad mom and bad wife when her own actions would cause her family to be homeless? Maybe I should call and tell her that. Edit. Yes, my husband did try to change my mind about not renewing. He's more level-headed than me, like some of y'all had to point out. And guess what? He didn't have to carry or push a human out like I did. Final update. So my brother called and apologized to me. He said he should have put a stop to his idiotic wife's blabbering mouth, but he didn't. He understood how ridiculous she was being and how vulnerable I'm currently. Anyway, he said that my husband found him a good new place. I wasn't aware of that. And he said his credit had recovered enough to allow him to rent on his own. It's gonna be harsh, but he thinks he can manage it in future. So that's it. Everything is good between me and my brother. And to show my husband my gratitude, I will be freeing him of tonight's nightly poop duties. It's good to know it's all resolved now. Honestly, everyone in your life sounds reasonable except your sister-in-law. She had no right to talk about your parenting style or anything like that to other family members. Your brother should have put a stop to it before you got to know, but he didn't. I'm glad he apologized for that. Your husband really deserves that reward you're giving him. He handled the situation perfectly. He took you and how you were feeling into account, and he also took your brother into account. Story 2. My 16-year-old son came to me panicked and said his 16-year-old boyfriend just told him the boyfriend was HIV positive. I told him to stay calm and no matter what, everything was going to be fine. Inside, I was more panicked than he was. We immediately drove and got my son tested. He's negative. My son is negative, but his boyfriend is positive. My son says boyfriend didn't lie or neglect to tell him. He only just found out himself. I have no reason not to believe him, but I still said he had to break up with the kid. I insisted on it. My son said they would be extra cautious and he would take PrEP and it would be fine, but I told him the truth. that it was too serious a disease for him to even slightly risk contracting at his age. I know most people won't believe me, but this has nothing to do with my son being gay. He's had 2 serious boyfriends in the past and a handful of dates. I've never had a problem. They would come by the house, it was fine. And this guy I had him break up with was a good guy. I just know my son's maturity level and don't trust him to take all the proper precautions to keep himself safe. If he were 30 and called and said, "My boyfriend just said he's HIV positive, but I don't want to break up with him," I would be by his side going to get PrEP prescription and reading all the articles and encouraging him to be safe, because it would be his responsibility as an adult to make these decisions for himself. Right now, though, I still have to nag him to wear a seatbelt when he drives. I don't feel like I would be doing my job as a parent if he kept seeing an HIV-positive person until he can protect himself. But my son, of course, does not agree. He says I'm being discriminatory against HIV-positive people, and I just got off the phone with my brother, and he said the same thing, that I'm taking this too seriously and I was wrong to make them break up. That even if that's what I wanted, it should have been a decision my son and I came together after more discussion. Am I the a-hole? No a-holes here, OP, and I feel for the position you're all in here. That said, I don't know if I think forcing him to leave the boyfriend is the concrete answer here. I fully get that teenagers are hormonal and crazy, but your son surely understands what a risk HIV is. Thankfully, it's not the death sentence it once was, but everyone should protect themselves. I feel like this would be a good opportunity to maybe take him to a doctor or other professional that could sit with both of you and discuss realistic plans on how your son could stay safe. I'm afraid if you force him, that your son will just go behind your back. Teens are sneaky. I can't imagine how this boyfriend must feel too. That has to be so frightening, and to see people backing away because of it. That's incredibly heartbreaking. It sounds like your son really cares for this boyfriend. Explore some other options if you can. Now for some comments. No a-holes here. You're just being concerned for your child's safety, which is totally normal. However, telling him to break up with his boyfriend will do nothing except make the situation more difficult. You should get him PrEP and discuss the seriousness of HIV and make sure he knows he can come to you for questions. Maybe help him research ways to keep safe and try to let him know the reason you wanted them to break up is because of how much you love him. No a-holes here. As a mom, your only job is to keep your minor son alive. From a biological perspective, you should do anything and everything to make that happen. Realistically, you can't prevent him from seeing his boyfriend. So education, PrEP, condoms, education, support, bringing his boyfriend into your house as much as possible so that they can have eyes on them, education and support will probably work better until they break up. Forbidden love tends to be very sexual. Your intention is not bad, but your methods are just not effective. HIV is a lifelong disease. It has no cure, and likely won't for a long time yet. So it's not he'll just take HIV medications. They must be taken at the same time daily to be effective at preventing the development of the disease and to prevent transmission. These drugs can have serious side effects, and if you stop taking them, the disease will progress and will again be transmissible. Also, there is evidence HIV can and does develop resistance to the medications taken, making them ineffective and will again increase risk of infection. Yes, HIV isn't the death sentence it was in the 80s or 90s, and there is treatment accessible and more in development, but it is still a lifelong and serious disease, and people do still die from it. You are right to be worried a 16-year-old doesn't understand the lifelong implications of a HIV-positive diagnosis. Story 3. My sister and I are the last of our family in the country. We have a few cousins abroad, and we are the last ones here since our mother passed away last year. My sister had 2 children, an 8-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. Both kids are the result of a relationship with a guy I told her was trouble from the beginning. They split up a year back and haven't been in each other's lives since. No one's sure where the father is now, and as predicted, he has abandoned them entirely. Last month, my sister was arrested. I was the one she called, and she asked me to look after her kids while she was in jail. I said I wouldn't be able to as I couldn't take the time off work to look after them. She begged me to help out and said that she didn't want her kids taken into foster care. I said I would visit them if that was an option to keep the family connection, but I don't want children. And I don't know how to look after them. I don't really have the resources and they would have to share a room in my home. Now, my sister is out of jail. The charges were dropped as there was a miscommunication. She's in the process of getting her kids back, but says they're incredibly traumatized by the separation from familiar people and surroundings. She says she's also struggling to prove she has a stable income to look after them, as her job let her go when she wasn't able to show up due to being in jail. She said that in this situation, if I had offered to take the kids, then they wouldn't be traumatized by their time in foster care, and she wouldn't be jumping through hoops to get a child services to leave them alone again. From what I hear, they ended up with a nice family in a good area. I think that family were better equipped to look after the kids than I was, and isn't it better for kids to be in a home where they're actually wanted? I'm sorry she's hurt, but realistically, there was no way around it. I work 12-hour days in the week and can't afford to take time off work or pay for that amount of childcare. I'm also not very good with kids and don't want to adjust to having kids. I know I wouldn't want to adjust, and I know that sounds selfish. Everyone would want to step up and say they would do the right thing. But ultimately, when it comes down to actually doing it, it's harder than it sounds. I wouldn't want the kids to be around a short-tempered, stressed version of me who's clearly in too deep. I like my niece and nephew a lot, but I don't think I would have been any good at looking after them for a long time. I didn't know it would be only a few weeks. It could have been indefinitely for all I knew, and I didn't want to adjust my lifestyle for kids that aren't mine. She'll get them back, and ultimately this was just a month out of their lives they probably won't remember when they're adults anyway. Am I the a-hole? No a-holes here, OP. Although your decision to not take care of the kids was a bit selfish, I believe you were being true to yourself. You understood that you would be miserable if you were to put yourself in that position, and you would rather not see that happen. Sure, it would have been easy for your sister to get the kids from you after she got out of jail, but it wouldn't have been easy for you or the kids to live well while she was in jail. You wouldn't know how to take care of them, and to top it all off, your work wouldn't allow it. Overall, I think you did the right thing. Your sister and a lot of people may not think so, but that's the downside of the decision you made.